I heard them laugh through the walls. My daughter's voice sharp, my son-in-law's smug. "She's useless now," they said. "Just dead weight." I sat there on the edge of my bed, hands trembling from the medication, heart heavier than any diagnosis. They thought I wouldn't last. They thought I'd quietly fade away. But today, I watched them beg for help. And this time, I was the one closing the door. We're about to begin, but if you'd like, share where you're joining from. It reminds me this story doesn't echo into silence. It lands somewhere real. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The casserole was still warm, nestled in a foil-covered Pyrex that Maggie cradled like a peace offering. Her coat hung heavy on her shoulders, damp from the September drizzle outside, and her hands trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from the effort of holding too much. A brown paper folder with her latest labs and medication list peeked from her tote bag. She rang the bell with the edge of her elbow. Vanessa opened the door without looking up from her phone. "Oh, good, you're early," Maggie stepped inside, wiping her shoes on the mat. The scent of air freshener tried too hard to cover up takeout grease. "I thought we were having dinner together," Maggie said gently. Vanessa gave a short laugh, turning toward the open concept kitchen where Derek leaned against the counter, beer in hand. "We weren't expecting a full production. You didn't need to cook. Again." Derek glanced up and grinned. "What's on the menu tonight, Ma? Sympathy stew with a side of terminal vibes?" Maggie set the casserole down on the counter without a word. The heat from the glass spread faintly under her palm. She reached into her tote and handed Vanessa the medical printouts. "These are from the specialist," she said, voice even. "Just so you know what the treatment will cost." "I thought we could talk about—" "Oh, for God's sake," Vanessa snapped, flicking through the papers like they were junk mail. "You've got a cold in Google. That doesn't make you dying. It makes you dramatic." Derek snorted and raised his beer like a toast. "To overreacting." A beat passed before he launched into a mock routine, miming Maggie downing pills, one by one from an invisible container. "Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Oops, what day is it again? Better take 'em all." Laughter echoed in the vaulted ceiling, sharp and sour. Maggie didn't blink. Her jaw tightened slightly, but her posture remained gracious. Still upright, still composed. A nurse's spine. Noah sat in the corner of the living room, frozen halfway through typing on his laptop. His eyes darted from his father to his aunt, then landed on his grandmother. Quietly, he stood, walked over, and pressed a folded tissue into her hand without saying a word. His knuckles were pale with tension. Vanessa caught the gesture. "Noah, don't encourage this. She needs to face reality. She's too much trouble, and we're not equipped to handle." She turned to Maggie and forced a thin smile. "We're trying to be practical. Maybe it's time you consider assisted living." Something structured. Maggie stared at her daughter for a long moment. Her eyes flicked briefly to Derek, then back to Vanessa. "I see," she said quietly. Derek reached over and plucked the casserole lid. "Is this the tuna one, or the sad chicken again?" Noah flinched. Maggie moved slowly toward her bag, her fingers brushing the worn leather like she was checking for something. Then, calmly, she reached in and pulled out her reading glasses, sliding them on as if nothing had happened. But she wasn't reading. Her fingers trailed across a cluster of folded receipts, envelopes, and annotated notes. She tucked one sheet topper into a pocket. Her movements casual, almost invisible, but deliberate. "Well," she said, adjusting the strap of her purse. "It seems I've overstayed." Vanessa sighed. "Oh, come on, don't be like that." But Maggie was already halfway to the door. She paused to look at Noah, her gaze softening just slightly. He opened his mouth to say something, anything, but Derek was already flipping channels on the TV, the volume rising like a curtain between them. She stepped out into the gray light, the drizzle now a steady whisper on the sidewalk. The casserole dish stayed behind. As she walked toward her car, Maggie pulled out her phone, not to call anyone, but to check the time. She made a small mental note, then glanced at the passenger seat, where a worn leather-bound notebook sat beneath a grocery bag. She opened the car door and slid in, closing it with a firm, echoing click. She didn't cry, she didn't rant. Instead, she opened the notebook to a marked page labeled Expense Reimbursements 2017-2023 and began flipping through it, her finger pausing now and then as if she were connecting dots only she could see. Her breath steadied, her eyes sharpened. Rain tapped against the windshield like a ticking clock. From the bungalow window, Noah watched her car pull away, unmoving, face pale with something between rage and helplessness. And Maggie, alone now, whispered under her breath, with the faintest curl of a smile, "Let's see who's a burden now." The rain had turned to a gentle mist by the time Maggie pulled into her driveway. Her bungalow sat quiet in the gray evening, porch light humming like it had been waiting for her. She unlocked the door with practiced slowness, stepped inside, and exhaled. No TV blaring, no laughter at her expense, just the sound of the old refrigerator cycling and the distant hum of cicadas, faint behind the windows. She placed her tote on the entryway bench, peeled off her coat, and walked to the hallway closet. From the top shelf, behind a shoebox labeled Noah's Art, grade school, Maggie pulled down something heavier. A leather-bound nurse's notebook, spine worn, corners curled. She carried it to the dining table, set it down with reverence, and opened it like a vault. Inside, decades of precision. Not just medications, but everything. Schedules, doctor appointments, bank withdrawal slips. Handwritten notes from her late husband clipped to pages like time-locked memories. Yellowed receipts from grocery runs. Contractor invoices for Derek's leaky ceiling. Cash App printouts of payments made on Vanessa's overdue utilities. She flipped to a section marked in blue ink. Family expenses paid, 2014-2022. Line after line, cross-referenced. $112 for Vanessa's MRI copay. $480 to cover Noah's summer program after Derek forgot to enroll him. One theft and $120 in plumbing repairs. Signed, billed, and marked paid from her account. Maggie's hand hovered over a ledger entry from 2017. It noted the shift of her pension account's access, a gentle request from Derek during his unemployment spell. Just temporary, Ma. She'd written the date, initialed it, but never closed the access, her jaw set. She pulled her phone from her pocket and dialed. The call rang twice. "Grandma," Noah's voice soft but alert. "You okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart, but I'd like your help with something. Are you home? I can be there in 10. She hung up and went to the desk drawer for a flash drive, pausing just long enough to remove the framed photo of her husband beside it. His eyes, forever kind and clear, watched her like a silent nod. 10 minutes later, Noah stepped in, hoodie damp from the rain. He looked like he hadn't stopped worrying since she left. Maggie motioned to the dining table. "I need this backed up. Everything. But not just saved, protected." He sat and scanned the notebook with wide eyes. "You've kept all of this?" She nodded. "People forget things when they want to. I've never been good at forgetting." He opened his laptop and connected the flash drive. "We'll scan it and upload it to an encrypted folder. Cloud backup, fingerprint lock, version tracking. I got you." She watched him work, his fingers fast but careful. A digital folder blinked to life on the screen. Noah titled it, "For When They Forget." She smiled. Good name. As the files uploaded, Maggie returned to the living room and opened a smaller compartment in her bag. She retrieved a letter, creased and slightly faded. Her husband's handwriting filled the page, penned years ago during her retirement. The closing lines read, "You've always been the steady one, Maggie. The one with both hands on the wheel when the rest of us fell asleep at it. Promise me you'll protect the house, even from those you love, especially them." She blinked twice, folded the letter carefully, and tucked it into the back of the notebook. "Almost done," Noah said from the dining table. "Want me to password protect it?" "Yes," Maggie said. "And I want you to remember that this folder, and everything in it, stays between us unless something happens to me. If anyone comes asking, you don't have it. You don't know anything." Noah looked up, eyes narrowing. Are you planning something? Maggie placed a hand on his shoulder. I'm just protecting what's mine. The last scan beeped complete. She stood still for a moment, hands resting on the chair back, then turned and walked to the phone. Not her cell, the landline. She dialed a number from memory. It rang once. Elena Carter, came the crisp voice on the other end. Elena, it's Maggie. I need your help. Not for later, for now. A pause. I was hoping I'd hear from you, Elena replied. Don't do anything until I run a title search, but be ready to act. Maggie's fingers brushed the leather cover of her notebook, still warm from the scanner's light. Oh, she said, with a steel softness. I'm ready. Elena Carter's law office sat in a converted 2-story brick building, tucked between a florist and a bike shop on Camden Road. The kind of place you wouldn't notice unless you knew what to look for. Inside, the air smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and old hardwood, with case files stacked in neat towers that said, I don't lose battles. I organize them. Maggie arrived early. Elena was already at her desk, hair pinned up, glasses perched low on her nose as she reviewed a thick folder marked Ellis M. She didn't look up right away, just motioned to the chair across from her and said, You brought the fire. Now let's talk fuel. Maggie slid the nurse's notebook across the desk. I want to make sure everything I've built can't be picked apart by entitlement. Elena opened it slowly, page by page. Her lawyer's mask softened as she moved through the receipts, signatures, and notes. You've done more work than half my forensic accountants, she murmured. I spent my life looking after other people, Maggie said. I'm just making sure I can look after myself now. Elena glanced up. What changed? They laughed at me. Maggie's voice was level, but something flared behind her eyes. They laughed, and I realize they think I'm already gone. I'm not. And I won't leave my life behind to people who treat it like clutter. Elena leaned back, nodding slowly. Okay, you have options. She stood, crossed to a whiteboard mounted behind her desk, and clicked a marker open. 1. You move your house and major accounts into a trust. Irrevocable. That locks down access. You decide who inherits and when. And how. Maggie folded her hands in her lap. No conditions. They're not getting it just because I die first. Good, Elena said, underlining trust on the board. 2. We revoke any existing power of attorney and draft a new one. Or none at all, depending on how much authority you want anyone else to have. I want to be the only one signing my name unless I'm comatose. Done. 3. We file a protective covenant, tied to your property deed. That means anyone who lives there or tries to interfere has to play by your rules or lose rights. You can even make harassment grounds for ejection. Maggie raised an eyebrow. That's real? It's not common, Elena said, smiling slightly. But yes, it's real. I used something similar in a case with a veteran whose son was draining his disability checks. Maggie exhaled, slow and measured. But listen, Elena added, voice more serious now. If we do this, expect backlash. They could try to challenge your capacity, file for guardianship, claim undue influence, especially with Noah involved. Maggie didn't flinch. Let them. I want dignity, not drama, but I won't be erased in my own home. Good, Elena said, capping the marker. Then here's what I need from you. She handed over a checklist printed on heavy paper. Gift histories for any major financial support you've given, names of neighbors, co-workers, or friends who've seen you manage your affairs. Copies of your current medical and cognitive evaluations, a short notarized statement in your own words about your wishes. Maggie skimmed it. I can get you everything but the medical eval. That'll take time, Elena shrugged. We'll get ahead of them. While they're scrambling to figure out what you're doing, we'll already be 3 moves ahead. A beat passed. Elena leaned forward, voice lower now. I need to know, how far are you willing to go? Maggie met her gaze, calm and steady. I raised them with the best parts of myself, and they laughed. So now I protect what's left, with everything I have. The 2 women sat in silence for a moment. something unspoken settling into the air between them. Then Elena said, "I'll start drafting the trust documents tonight, but I want you to be ready for war." Maggie reached into her purse and removed the folded letter from her husband, sliding it across the desk. "I already am." The knock came earlier than expected, sharp and rehearsed, like they'd practiced it on the porch. Maggie looked up from her coffee. She was at the dining table, the nurse's notebook closed beside her, the faint scent of lemon balm drifting from a mug she hadn't yet touched. Through the window, she saw Derek's truck parked crooked in the driveway. Vanessa's crossover behind it, engine still running. She stood and opened the door. Derek was all smiles. Vanessa had a manila envelope tucked under her arm and an expression that looked borrowed from a realtor's brochure. Polished, condescending, eager to take charge. "We were in the neighborhood," Vanessa said, stepping past Maggie before being invited. "Thought we'd check in." "Nice place," Ma, Derek added, following close behind. "Still holding up?" Maggie shut the door quietly behind them. "Still mine, if that's what you're asking." Vanessa let out a clipped laugh and placed the envelope on the coffee table. "We brought some brochures, assisted living options, just some places to think about. Some even have little gardens and classes, pottery, that kind of thing." Maggie walked to the kitchen and picked up her mug, calm. "And why would I be looking into those?" "Well," Vanessa said, sitting down like she owned the place, "because you've been saying things are hard. Managing all this alone. We just want what's best for you. You need more professional care, regular oversight." Derek nodded, pulling out a folded paper from his jacket. "We figured, maybe it makes sense if we start consolidating the bills, just to take the pressure off. You know, combine the property taxes, utilities, maybe your prescriptions. Easier if it all runs through one place." "And by one place," Maggie said, "you mean your bank account." Vanessa's mouth tightened. No need to be cynical. Maggie looked between them, then turned to the hallway and called out, "Noah, could you bring my phone?" From the back room, Noah emerged, holding it already recording. The camera angled subtly down. He set it on the console table near the door, screen facing up. Nobody commented. Vanessa clocked it. "Seriously?" she said. "You're recording this?" "You came here unannounced," Maggie said. "With paperwork." Derek chuckled, trying the charm routine. "Ma, we're not villains. We're just trying to help you transition. Things are changing. You said it yourself." "I said I needed space," Maggie replied. "Not surveillance." Vanessa stood now, voice rising. "You're playing the victim again. We are bending over backwards to make sure you're not out here making dangerous choices. And this," she gestured at the phone, "this is what we get." "I'm not signing anything today," Maggie said, walking past them toward the hall closet. Vanessa followed. "Then maybe it's time we start covering your house expenses anyway. Force some accountability, because from the outside, it looks like a crisis waiting to happen." Derek was wandering the living room now, fingers trailing across picture frames, shelves, old figurines, family history reduced to decor. He stopped near the antique clock her husband had restored years ago. "You know," he said casual, "people always assumed the title would go to us, eventually. I mean, this place is practically part of our family story." Maggie returned, carrying a thick white binder. She placed it on the coffee table, right next to Vanessa's brochures. Medical notes, treatment plans, pension deposit records, labeled tabs in colored plastic. "If you're that curious," Maggie said evenly, "you can start here." Derek stared at it, unsure whether to touch it. Noah stood frozen near the door, phone still quietly recording. Vanessa broke the silence. "Is this some kind of scare tactic?" Maggie smiled, just enough to show her teeth. "No, sweetheart, this is documentation." A long pause. Derek shifted uncomfortably, suddenly less sure of his footing. Then Vanessa scoffed and grabbed the brochures. "We'll talk later, when you're being reasonable." They left without another word, Derek lingering half a second longer to glance at the binder before following. The door clicked shut behind them. Maggie looked down at her hands, still steady. Noah walked over slowly. That was a lot. It was practice, Maggie said, tapping the phone to stop the recording. Next time, they won't come with brochures. They'll come with lawyers. The second time Maggie stepped into Elena's office, she didn't hesitate. No looking around, no careful glances at the exit. She knew what she was doing now, and she had already said goodbye to the version of herself that second-guessed whether she deserved to protect what was hers. Elena was waiting, everything prepared in a neat stack on her polished desk. 2 pens, a witness already seated across the room, and a document folder thick with intent. Everything's ready, Elena said, standing. Once you sign, there's no going back. Maggie nodded once. Good. She removed her coat, folded it over the back of the chair, and sat down. Her hands didn't tremble this time. Elena opened the trust documents first. Ivory paper, crisp, humming with the quiet electricity of finality. This moves your pension, your remaining investments, and your home into the Ellis Trust. Irrevocable. You control it while you're living. Upon your death, Noah becomes successor trustee. Maggie signed without blinking. Noah can't sell the home, rent it, or occupy it without honoring these occupancy covenants. Elena continued, flipping to a smaller document. That means no harassment, no third-party pressure, no shifting around ownership without legal mediation. Maggie signed again. And this, Elena said, sliding forward a single notarized sheet with a small blue tab, gives me limited legal authority to enforce those covenants, including filing restraining orders, property injunctions, or civil claims, should any party attempt to violate the structure. Maggie paused, not from hesitation, but something else. Resolve settling like dust in an old attic. I trust you, she said simply, then signed. The witness initialed everything beside her. Now for healthcare, Elena said, producing a bright orange folder labeled Advanced Medical Directives. This document affirms that your treatment decisions remain yours unless and until a licensed physician in a court declare you incapacitated. She leaned in slightly. It's airtight. Even if they try to file guardianship, it won't hold without a fight. You remain your own agent. Maggie picked up the pen and looked at the line. Under it, Margaret Louise Ellis. She signed. A hush settled as Elena slid the document into a fireproof envelope and sealed it with a red wax stamp. It felt like a spell. One last thing, Maggie said, reaching into her bag. She removed a single check, folded and signed, and passed it across the desk. Elena raised an eyebrow. What's this? A donation, Maggie said. To the community health clinic on Hawthorne Avenue. I want the funds to support elder outreach, home visits, mental health screenings. Call it a small insurance policy. If something happens to me, I want part of my life to keep helping people who don't get seen. Elena smiled for the first time that day. It wasn't a lawyer's smile. It was something softer. I'll set it up through the trust, she said. They'll never be able to touch it. Maggie leaned back in the chair, exhaling a long, measured breath. The clock on the wall ticked forward. No speeches, no theatrics. Just the soft weight of protection descending like a quilt. One sewn over decades of thankless labor, quiet sacrifice, and earned strength. Everything else, Elena said, gathering the signed copies, will file with the clerk's office before end of day. You'll get scanned copies and certified ones by mail. Maggie stood, gathering her coat. I don't need the paper to feel protected, she said. I just need them to know they lost access. Elena followed her to the door. You're not just protecting yourself, Maggie. You're building a wall they'll never climb. Maggie looked back once. Then let's make sure they see it from every angle. Derek Ellis stared at his banking app, blinking. Then again, slower. He refreshed the screen 3 times before the truth settled like cement in his gut. No deposit. No mom's pension, monthly support, labeled in gray. No spillover from her credit account tied to his business expenses. No subtle padding in the checking account he'd gotten too used to treating as a backup wallet. Vanessa, he barked from the kitchen. Did you move the money early this month? Vanessa, sitting on the sectional with her laptop open to Instagram, didn't look up. It's your mother's money, Derek, not mine. And I haven't touched her stuff since she pulled that binder stunt. He dropped into a chair and ran a hand through his hair. No, something's wrong. It's not just the pension. The joint card got declined when I tried to order tires. Vanessa's fingers froze over the keyboard. Wait, seriously? He turned his screen around. Gone. I can't even access the transaction log anymore. She sat up straighter. She locked you out. Yeah, he snapped. That's what I'm telling you. Vanessa's jaw clenched. Then she reached for her phone and opened her Facebook app. 30 minutes later, a new post went up on her page. A smiling photo of Maggie from 2 Thanksgivings ago, cropped just enough to isolate her face. The caption read, "When the people you care for most suddenly decide you're disposable, after everything you've done, I guess family doesn't mean what it used to." Elder abuse. Manipulated by others. Heartbroken. Within an hour, the comments started piling in. Oh no, what happened? Sending prayers, hope she realizes how lucky she is. Let us know how we can help. Derek added a comment of his own. Hard to help someone who refuses to be helped. We tried. But then a new post appeared. From Maggie, a single image, her front porch bathed in morning light, her worn rocking chair in the foreground. The caption, quiet and firm. Dignity isn't a debt to be repaid. Autonomy isn't a failure to age quietly. I am not anyone's burden, and no longer anyone's account. Underneath it, Noah, silently, without fanfare, posted 3 screenshots to his private story. A spreadsheet labeled Ellis Family Expenses 2014-2023, a photo of the pension transfer authorization signed in Derek's name, and the closing line from Maggie's notebook, "For when they forget." By nightfall, the tide shifted. Comments under Vanessa's post turned. This feels one-sided. Didn't Maggie pay for your last surgery? She still volunteers at the clinic, right? Doesn't sound cold to me. The next morning, Elena filed a notice of trust formation and occupancy covenant with the county clerk's office. 2 certified letters went out by courier, one to Derek's condo, the other to Vanessa's townhome. Each one marked legal service, occupancy restrictions enclosed. They were polite, but final. The letters outlined the terms of the covenant. No authority over property decisions. No financial claims without trustee approval. No legal standing for caretaking rights without a verified court-sanctioned agreement. Derek called Elena's office that afternoon. Her assistant put him straight to voicemail. By Sunday, whispers had begun around Maggie's neighborhood. Old Mr. Halpern, 2 doors down, mentioned Maggie's name at the co-op. Said she once drove his wife to chemo 3 times a week for a year. Ms. Ritter, the retired school teacher, brought up how Maggie used to organize backpack drives out of her garage for underfunded students. She's sharp, one neighbor said. Fiercely independent, another added. Whatever's going on, said a third. You'd better believe it's not because she lost her grip. Derek felt it all slipping. On Monday morning, he stormed into his office and pulled up a legal template he'd saved months ago, one Elena had warned might come eventually. Adult guardianship petition, preliminary filing. He stared at the fields, already half completed. Vanessa appeared behind him. You're really doing this? Derek didn't turn. She wants war? Fine. The court summons arrived in a plain envelope, no bigger than a birthday card. Maggie opened it at the kitchen table while Noah watched from across the room, holding his breath as if the paper itself might explode. She read it once, then again slower. Her eyes didn't widen, they narrowed. Petition for adult guardianship, she read aloud. Petitioner claims subject exhibits erratic behavior, memory lapses, and diminished financial judgment. A pause. Likely under the influence of a dependent grandchild. Noah flinched. They mentioned me? They're scared, Maggie said, folding the letter. So they're throwing shadows, hoping something sticks. She picked up her phone and dialed. Elena answered on the first ring. I got it too, she said. Already pulled their filing. They're going for an emergency ex parte ruling. Maggie stood. Then we don't give them a shadow. We give them light. Blinding, clinical, documented light. 2 days later, Elena's office was war-ready. A binder labeled Ellis v. Ellis. Guardianship petition lay open across her desk, its tabs color-coded like a military strategy. Noah sat beside Maggie, laptop open, scrolling through folder backups like a courtroom assistant in training. Elena walked them through the defense. We lead with medical records, primary care, neurologist, and your last physical. Then your notarized healthcare directive, signed under independent witness and legal review. We add pension statements, every bank record you annotated, and character affidavits from neighbors, co-workers, and clinic staff. No gaps. Noah spoke up. What about the recordings? Elena nodded. We'll use them sparingly. Judges don't like drama, but that clip of Derek asking about the title? Gold. Maggie's fingers rested on the edge of the table. She didn't shake. Do I testify? Elena looked her straight in the eye. Yes, you're the only one who can collapse their narrative from the inside. Maggie gave a small nod. Then I'll be ready. Courtroom 6B smelled faintly of dust and old coffee. The judge, a lean woman with silver-streaked braids and steel in her posture, called the matter to order with a glance over the rim of her glasses. Derek sat at the petitioner's table in a too-tight suit. Vanessa beside him, arms crossed, wearing a neutral expression that didn't quite cover her simmering disdain. Maggie sat at the respondent's table, flanked by Elena and Noah, her cane resting beside her chair, untouched. Derek's lawyer, a clean-cut man with the oily confidence of someone used to being underestimated, stood first. My client is here out of deep concern, he began. This is not a matter of greed. This is a matter of love. Miss Ellis is nearly 70, recently diagnosed with chronic health issues, and, by her own admission, overwhelmed by the responsibilities of independent living. He turned, voice softening. She's always been the rock of her family, but lately, we've seen concerning shifts. Erratic communication, financial secrecy, sudden legal restructuring involving a minor grandchild. All signs she may be vulnerable to undue influence. Vanessa nodded solemnly, eyes glistening just enough for the second row to notice. Elena stood without notes. Your Honor, she said, voice cool and precise. We have provided notarized medical records from 2 board-certified physicians, a cognitive assessment scoring within normal range, and a notarized directive executed in full legal capacity. She lifted the binder slightly. Inside this file are 10 years of financial records, meticulously logged by Ms. Ellis herself. Every payment she made to these petitioners is documented. Every instance where she served as caregiver, co-signer, or emergency contact. This is not a woman in decline. This is a woman defending her autonomy against those who benefited from her silence. The judge looked toward Maggie. Ms. Ellis, do you wish to speak? Maggie rose slowly, gripping the chair only for balance. She met the judge's gaze. I worked 40 years as a pediatric nurse, she said. I raised 2 children, paid my bills, buried my husband, and survived a diagnosis that should have knocked me flat. But what shook me wasn't the illness. It was being told I was inconvenient. By the people I raised. A beat of silence. I am not confused. I am not manipulated. I am not incompetent. I am clear-headed, and I have chosen to protect what I have left. She sat. Even the court reporter looked up. The judge called recess. 20 minutes later, she returned. I see no evidence of immediate incapacity, she said, voice flat but firm. The petition for emergency guardianship is denied. But she didn't stop there. I will order a formal competency evaluation. Neutral third party, within 2 weeks. This courtroom will make no permanent rulings until then. Gavel down. Motion adjourned. The call came just 3 days after the court hearing. A soft-voiced producer from Good Morning Carolina left a message on Maggie's landline. We understand there's been a legal dispute within your family. We'd love to give you the opportunity to tell your side of the story. Respectfully, of course. Noah hit pause mid-voicemail, already frowning. They saw the court leak. Maggie sat motionless at the dining table, mug in hand, her expression unreadable. They want a spectacle, she said quietly. They think I'll cry on cue. Elena's voice crackled through the speakerphone, calm and pragmatic. Then let them bring the cameras, Maggie. You're not here to perform. You're here to correct the record. They agreed to meet the producer at a local nonprofit studio. Neutral ground, no grand sets. Just one floor lamp, 2 chairs, and a clean gray backdrop that didn't demand attention. Maggie arrived wearing a powder blue blazer and her late husband's old watch, the same one he wore to his retirement dinner. Her hair was pinned back simply, the way she'd worn it to years of patient consultations. She looked not like someone trying to reclaim control, but someone who'd never truly lost it. Elena sat beside her, a sleek leather briefcase at her feet. The producer, a woman in her early 30s with sympathetic eyes and a well-practiced smile, greeted them warmly. We'd like to keep this conversational. Just your voice. No back and forth with your children. This is your platform. Maggie nodded once. I'm not here for revenge. Just truth. They rolled tape. The final cut aired on a Friday morning. Maggie's segment followed the weather. It opened with archival footage. A grainy photograph of a young Maggie Ellis in scrubs, standing outside the pediatric unit at Mercy General in the 80s, her arms wrapped around 2 smiling children. The voiceover began. At 68, Margaret Ellis isn't asking for much. Just the right to live in her own home and not be treated like a problem to solve. Then, the interview. Maggie, measured and direct, spoke of her decades as a nurse, the sacrifices, the small, thankless payments she made to help her kids during their hardest years, the pension account she quietly allowed Derek to access, the moment they mocked her pain and called her a burden. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't cry, she simply opened the ledger. People forget, she said on camera, tapping the binder. They forget who kept the lights on, who paid the bills, who was there when the toilet overflowed or the babysitter didn't show. So I kept track, not to use it against them, but because I knew, one day, they'd pretend none of it mattered. Elena appeared briefly, presenting notarized documents to the producer, the trust deed, the medical directives, a copy of the competency evaluation order. Legal proof, no drama, just facts. Noah didn't speak on camera. But the producer quietly confirmed that he'd provided full digital access to the encrypted For When They Forget folder. Independent verification, she said to viewers, all cross-checked by our legal team. Then came the visual gut punch, side-by-side images. On the left, Maggie in the clinic parking lot, handing a hot lunch to a struggling mother. On the right, Derek's comment under Vanessa's smear post. Hard to help someone who refuses to be helped. The segment ended not with music, but with silence. A full-screen graphic. Autonomy is not abandonment. Age is not incompetence. Let us remember who cared for us before we rewrite their story. The response was immediate. Neighborhood Facebook groups lit up. Threads titled, Stand with Maggie appeared across platforms. One neighbor started a Change.org petition. Uphold elder autonomy. Protect Maggie Ellis. Within 48 hours, it passed 5,000 signatures. Someone from the clinic posted old photos of Maggie leading after-school tutoring. Another shared her homemade chili recipe from the monthly meal trains. The comments grew thick with memories and quiet fury. She drove my dad to every VA appointment. She bought backpacks for my twins last fall. She's sharper than half the city council. Vanessa tried to push back. She posted a new photo of her and Derek, wine glasses in hand, with a caption that read, Family isn't perfect, but manipulation is never okay. We still love our mom, even if others want to divide us. But the comments didn't play along. You mean the mom who paid your mortgage in 2019? The one you said should go into a facility? Try love without control next time. Her curated image, flawless, composed, superior, began to slip. PR contacts stopped replying. A local brand deal paused indefinitely. The courthouse was packed this time. Not just lawyers and petitioners, but neighbors, volunteers from the clinic, a couple of local reporters, even Ms. Ritter, the retired schoolteacher who once called Maggie the spine of the block, sat 3 rows back, arms crossed and eyes sharp. Maggie entered without fanfare, blazer crisp, notebook tucked under one arm. Noah walked beside her, camera slung discreetly over one shoulder. Elena followed, a rolling briefcase in tow and the look of a woman who hadn't lost emotion in years. Derek was already seated at the petitioner's table, pale and visibly sweating through his collar. Vanessa sat beside him, stiff as granite, her phone screen dimmed on her lap. The energy around them buzzed with the awkward heat of exposure. The bailiff called the matter to order. Elena rose. Your Honor, in response to the ongoing guardianship action initiated by Mr. Derek Ellis, the respondent, Ms. Margaret Ellis, is filing a motion to dismiss the petition in full. We are also requesting a no-contact injunction on grounds of escalating harassment and abuse of process, as defined by the protective covenant currently on file with the county. The judge, the same one from the emergency petition hearing, nodded. Proceed. Elena didn't flinch. She began to lay it out, brick by brick. A comprehensive timeline of financial contributions from Miss Ellis to the petitioners, spanning 2014 to 2023. All transactions verified by account statements. She handed a thick folder to the clerk. Affidavits from Ms. Ellis's longtime bank teller, confirming regular in-person deposits and her explicit instructions regarding account access and pension handling. Another folder passed, and a full transcript and verified broadcast of Ms. Ellis's recent public statement on Good Morning Carolina, which includes notarized documentation shown during the segment, as well as her own testimony regarding her capacity, intentions, and the years of caretaking she provided. The courtroom was quiet, save for the soft clicking of laptop keys from the press bench. Elena didn't stop. We have also received the final report from the court-appointed forensic evaluator. She held it up, a white envelope sealed with the state's official stamp. Findings: Ms. Ellis possesses full executive cognitive function. No symptoms consistent with diminished capacity. The report explicitly affirms her testamentary intent in establishing the irrevocable trust and protective deed covenant. The judge opened the envelope, scanned silently, and then looked up. I have reviewed the report. Derek shifted in his seat. Mr. Ellis, the judge said flatly, this court finds no basis for guardianship, emergency or otherwise. Your petition is hereby dismissed. Vanessa's shoulders sank. Derek's mouth twitched, as if still looking for something to say, but the judge wasn't done. This court further notes an ongoing pattern of harassment through improper legal pressure, public misinformation, and potential financial coercion. Continued filings of this nature will result in sanctions. Effective immediately, Ms. Ellis is granted interim protective status under the covenant already in place. The gavel hit once. Boom. It echoed louder than it should have. Elena exhaled, not relief, but release. Maggie stood, nodding politely to the judge. Her eyes never touched Derek. As they exited the courtroom, the hallway was already filled with quiet claps and soft voices. She did it. About time. She's got more backbone than anyone I know. Noah held the camera down by his side, recording just the feet moving past polished tile and worn bench corners. His lens caught Derek slamming out a side door, jaw clenched, muttering curses under his breath, as Vanessa trailed behind him, trying to avoid eye contact with anyone. Maggie didn't look back. Outside, the air smelled like sun-warmed pavement and cut grass. She paused just beyond the courthouse steps, letting the moment settle into her bones. Elena reached into her bag and handed her a thin envelope. "What's this?" Maggie asked. The paperwork's done, Elena said. The court's clerk will seal the dismissal within the hour. You're protected, formally and legally. Maggie tucked it into her bag. It's not about being safe anymore. No? No, she said, watching a neighbor wave from across the parking lot. It's about being seen. The envelope looked official, the kind of envelope that made people sit down before opening it. Maggie didn't. She stood at the kitchen counter, slicing carrots for stew, the knife's rhythm unbroken even as Noah handed her the envelope from that morning's mail drop. Registered mail, he said quietly. Return address is a contractor, Charlotte County Records. Maggie wiped her hands, dried the blade, and opened it with the kind of precision that didn't belong to fear, but to someone preparing for surgery. She unfolded the letter, skimmed it, then passed it silently to Noah. Noah read it aloud, voice tightening. Notice of mechanic's lien filed against Margaret Ellis, owner of parcel 114-0388B. Amount claimed, $12,450. Services rendered, labor and materials supplied for condominium kitchen upgrades. He blinked. That's Derek's place. A second document was clipped behind the first, a notice of intent to collect from a private lender, citing an unpaid co-signed loan tied to shared family assets. Maggie's eyes narrowed. He's trying to bury me in fake debt. She turned off the stove and picked up her phone. Elena's voice was sharp before Maggie even finished the explanation. He filed a lien tied to his own property under your name, and he attached a co-signed loan? He forged something, Maggie said, or paid someone to pretend I signed. I'm filing to quash it immediately, Elena said. But if there's even a single endorsement that looks valid on paper, we need records fast. Noah was already moving toward the hallway closet. I have the scanned receipts. Every home improvement Derek charged to her over the last 5 years. Maggie opened her filing cabinet and pulled out an envelope marked Derek, condo repairs, declined. Inside, a contractor estimate Maggie had refused to pay 2 years earlier. Her handwritten note still scrawled across the top. Not my property, not my bill. By the next morning, Elena had subpoenaed the lien contractor. He showed up to the county clerk's hearing wearing jeans and a wrinkled flannel, clearly not expecting legal muscle. Your Honor, Elena said, cool and lethal. My client has never authorized this contractor for any work. We have banking records showing 0 payments to his business, as well as a formal estimate she rejected. She placed the envelope on the table. The clerk reviewed it. Mr. Warner, did you perform this work on the home listed here? The man shifted. Well, not that home, but her son said she was footing the bill. Said it was a family asset. Elena raised an eyebrow. Did she ever sign anything? He hesitated. Did you check ownership records? Silence. Elena didn't press further. She didn't need to. The clerk marked the lien for immediate review and temporary suspension pending verification. That night, Vanessa posted a new reel to Instagram, a slow pan of Derek's condo kitchen, polished quartz counters gleaming under pendant lighting. Caption: Renovations cost money. Some people pretend they don't remember who paid what, but the paper trail always tells the truth. Family first. Stop the lies. But this time, comments didn't rally. Instead, one neighbor posted a link to the county property records with a note. Titles in Derek's name. Why's the lien on Maggie's house? Another shared a photo of Maggie from the clinic's food pantry that morning. Apron on, ladling soup with quiet focus, her expression calm as ever. She served 50 meals today. Vanessa posted countertops. Noah, without fanfare, sent a private message to half a dozen neighbors who'd helped Maggie over the years. Within a day, affidavits began arriving in Elena's inbox. One neighbor submitted a notarized statement. I was with Maggie the day she told Derek she wouldn't pay for the kitchen. I remember because she made stew that night. Said it was the only thing she'd be cooking in a house she actually owns. Back in her kitchen, Maggie stirred a new pot of stew as Noah printed the latest paperwork from Elena. The mechanic's lien was being formally challenged. The fake loan was under fraud investigation. "Everything okay?" Noah asked, setting the papers down. Maggie tasted the broth, added a dash of thyme, and gave a small nod. "They're still throwing rope," she said. "They just don't realize I stopped being the net." Maggie first heard about the clinic audit from the janitor. She was restocking canned beans at the pantry shelf when Carlos leaned into the doorway, his voice low and hesitant. "They said we gotta pause weekend outreach. Some kind of funding flag. Paperwork thing." Maggie straightened, one hand still resting on a box of rice. "What kind of flag?" "Somebody called the grant board. Said there were inconsistencies. That money was being used off record." He lowered his voice even further. "They said it came in anonymous, but it got to the main donor." Maggie felt it in her chest, not like panic, but like déjà vu. Another wound, already planned. Another rope thrown. "Tell them I'll get the books myself." The clinic board chair called her the next morning. "I'm sorry, Maggie, but until the donor clears this up, we've been asked to suspend all non-essential services tied to the grant. That includes the mobile pantry, tutoring, and senior transport." Maggie didn't argue. Instead, she said, "Give me 72 hours. Then she hung up, poured herself a cup of tea, and opened a new folder labeled Clinic, Direct Disbursements. By noon, she'd printed 10 years of donation receipts, monthly reports, and itemized volunteer logs. Every mile reimbursed, every loaf of bread donated, every medical glove ordered through the outreach cart supply budget. Noah set up a fundraising landing page within the hour. "Help bridge the gap. 3 days without the grant." The tagline read, "When they try to silence service, the neighborhood speaks louder." By the second day, former patients started emailing letters. The woman from Pine Brook who Maggie once drove to a mammogram. A veteran with limited mobility who credited Maggie with catching his high blood pressure in time. 2 teenagers who had finished high school because Maggie kept their after-school snack fridge stocked and their homework table open. At dusk, Maggie walked the block with a clipboard and a stack of flyers. "Pop-up bake sale," she told one neighbor. "Garage pantry reopens Saturday," she told another. By Friday morning, the clinic parking lot was full. Volunteers in mismatched aprons handed out stew and boxed hygiene kits. A barbershop quartet from the church down the street performed under a pop-up tent. And taped to the clinic door, laminated against the breeze, "All donor funds accounted for. This house was built on receipts, not rumors." Elena's text came through while Maggie was handing a winter coat to a mother of 3. "Found it." Anonymous email tip to donor board traced to Derek's IP. Sent from Vanessa's login. Sent the screenshots to the board. Should clear by Monday. Maggie said nothing at first. Then she turned to Noah, who was boxing leftover granola bars. "Want to know the thing about sabotage?" she asked. Noah looked up. "It only works when you haven't already built something they can't tear down." Vanessa's Instagram was quiet for 3 days. Then a story popped up. A quote graphic over a blurred photo of a courtroom. Just because someone plays the victim well doesn't mean they aren't the villain. Truth will out her. Family matters. Still standing. But there was no rally this time. Her usual circle, the yoga instructor, the interior designer, the 2 boutique owners who once reposted her kitchen tour, said nothing. In fact, one of them reposted Maggie's fundraising link instead. Vanessa slammed her laptop shut. "I need backup," she said to Derek, pacing their kitchen. Derek didn't look up from his phone. "You already lit the match. What else is left to burn?" The envelope was thick, oversealed and hand-delivered, not by the postman, but by a uniformed courier who didn't make eye contact. Noah answered the door. The man handed it over without a word, then turned and left as if he'd just dropped off a bomb. Maggie stood at the dining table, hands in dishwater, sleeves damp. "What is it?" she asked. Noah read the first few lines aloud, slowly. "Notice of eviction. Property. 32 Winslow Avenue. Basis. Guarantor enforcement tied to commercial lease default. Amount in arrears, 16 Tasuno $200. He looked up. They're trying to evict you. Maggie wiped her hands on the towel, took the papers, and scanned the body of the notice. Her name was typed cleanly in bold print, but the signature at the bottom, scrawled beside a faded lease agreement from years ago, turned her mouth to a line. Derek's failed startup, she said. I told him I wouldn't co-sign that lease. I remember the argument. He said it was just a formality. Noah leaned in, squinting at the faint signature. That doesn't even look like your handwriting. It's not, she said, but it's trying to. Elena's heels clicked against the floor of the county clerk's office like a metronome set to war tempo. Forgery is tricky, she said as she reviewed the lease copy, especially if they traced your signature from an old birthday card or legal form. It gives just enough resemblance for someone to claim confusion, but not enough to hold under scrutiny. She pulled out her phone. I'll subpoena the leasing office, the property manager, and the original notary. We need chain of custody on every page of this lease. Maggie sat across from her. The eviction notice open between them. He's not just coming for the house, she said. He's trying to poison the land beneath it. Noah spent the rest of the afternoon digging through 3 old boxes in the attic. Boxes labeled taxes, appliance manuals, and receipts, large. At the bottom of the third, under a faded repair invoice for her roof and a payment stub for a 1998 air conditioner, he found it. A canceled check made out to Treeline Property Management, the first and only payment Maggie had ever issued on Derek's behalf, back when he started the company. The check was dated 2 months after the lease in question had been signed. No signature on the lease, just a memo line on the check, gift, not tied to lease obligation. By Friday morning, Elena had filed a motion to quash the eviction. Inside the courtroom, she presented 3 documents side by side on an easel board. The forged signature from the lease, Maggie's confirmed notarized signature from the trust filing, and the canceled check. The handwriting doesn't match, Elena told the judge. The bank documents prove no co-signature was executed. And the landlord's own file, she added, holding up the subpoenaed packet, is missing both a proper notary seal and any witness acknowledgement. This is sloppy fraud, and it nearly forced my client from her own home. The landlord, a nervous man with too much gel in his hair and a poorly knotted tie, stammered from the bench. We were told she was the guarantor. The son handled the paperwork. It looked official. Did you verify ownership? Elena asked. No, we took it in good faith. The judge looked unimpressed. That's not how enforcement works. The eviction is paused pending full investigation, and I expect formal verification before any future action is taken. Gavel, dismissed. Outside the courthouse, cameras were waiting this time. Derek stepped into the frame, shirt collar stiff, mouth pinched in false humility. My family's legal mess has been unfortunate, he said, barely holding back a sneer. I never wanted any of this to be public. I just want peace. But a reporter interrupted him. Did you forge your mother's signature on a commercial lease? He faltered. Vanessa, just out of frame, hissed, Let's go. They disappeared into the parking lot. That evening, Maggie sat on the porch with Noah. The sun was setting low behind the hills, casting a clean orange light over the front lawn. The air was still. She poured them both a glass of sweet tea and slid the canceled check into a plastic sleeve, then into her notebook under a new tab. A tax answered. This house isn't just wood and insulation, she said. Noah sipped quietly. What is it then? A record, she said. And they can't erase it. But just as she stood to go inside, her phone buzzed with a new alert. Subject: Motion for emergency rehearing, custodial oversight appeal. Filed, Noah read over her shoulder. He's going federal? Maggie's face went still. No, she said. He's going desperate. Elena didn't knock when she entered Maggie's kitchen that morning. She just stepped in, briefcase in one hand, a flash drive in the other, and set both on the table between Maggie's still-warm teacup and Noah's open laptop. "It's time," she said. Maggie raised an eyebrow. "Time for what?" Elena slid the flash drive forward like a poker chip at a high-stakes table. "For someone else to ask the questions we've been forced to answer." The file was labeled D. Ellis, Ledger Reconciliation, Fund Irregularities. Inside were 2 years of financial records from Derek's now-defunct LLC, painstakingly cross-referenced against his personal accounts. Elena had hired a forensic accountant, quietly, months ago. And what he found wasn't just damning, it was surgical. Luxury expenses hidden under client entertainment, lease payments on his condo listed as equipment rental, a $5,000 watch filed under staff bonuses, and buried deep in a March ledger, a wire transfer labeled Mother Repayment, with no correlating deposit ever recorded. Maggie sat back in her chair. "He used my name to cover his debt," Elena nodded. "And now we give it to someone who deals in consequences." By Wednesday, the county prosecutor had the file. The official complaint went in under seal, but the subpoenas were loud. Bank statements, transaction logs, vendor communications, all of it drawn into the light. Derek received the notice while at brunch with a prospective business partner. According to a server who leaked the moment to a local blog, he'd been explaining a new multi-property growth model when the email pinged his phone. He turned pale, left cash on the table, and walked out before the coffee even arrived. By that afternoon, 2 credit lines were frozen. A third partner quietly withdrew from a joint venture Derek had spent 6 months cultivating. Word was getting around, and no one wanted to sit at a table with a man under federal inquiry. Elena didn't stop there. She filed a civil claim under state RICO statutes. Asset misappropriation, trust manipulation, and reputational harm. Supported by Maggie's original financial logs, recorded statements from neighbors, and the forensic trail now charted in red. The claim listed 5 counts of breach, 3 of fraud, and 1 of malicious interference with protected resources, the trust being legally classified as 1. The court served it directly to Derek's condo door. The process server said he opened the door, shirtless, saw the envelope, and said only 1 word: shit. Noah kept quiet through most of it, eyes focused on editing the interview clips from Maggie's story for an upcoming public hearing. But when the lien notices hit Derek's building, notices that resulted from unpaid supplier debts, and the sudden recall of a failed grant application linked to false disclosures, he turned to Maggie and said, "They thought you were fighting to keep what was yours, but you were building a case to expose what was never theirs to take." Maggie didn't smile. She just nodded. Vanessa, meanwhile, scrambled. Her inbox was a graveyard. Unanswered emails from brand reps, canceled calendar invites, a rescheduled charity gala with no new date. One boutique line quietly removed her from their affiliate page. Another asked her to return samples, pending clarification. Her latest post, a soft-lit selfie with a mug reading "Empathy is Strength," received more eye-roll emojis than hearts. In group text, the chatter was colder now. Shorter replies, polite silence. When she tried to organize a brunch, 3 women dropped out with vague excuses. By Friday night, even her realtor friend had gone quiet. Vanessa slammed her laptop shut. "They think I'm guilty by proximity," she snapped to Derek. He was sitting in the dark, drink in hand, eyes fixed on his phone screen. He didn't answer. Because he'd just received the final notice. Subject: State of North Carolina Financial Asset Inquiry Compliance Demand. Action required, 48 hours. His condo, now tied up in pending claims, was no longer a sanctuary. It was leverage. And it was slipping. Back in Maggie's kitchen, the windows were open. A soft fall breeze rolled through, fluttering the edge of a hand-labeled file on the table. Derek closed. Elena raised her tea. "To the quiet strike," she said. Maggie tapped her mug to it, but her phone buzzed before she could sip. Unknown caller, legal office, Washington, D.C. Noah frowned. Federal? Maggie picked it up steady. Let's find out, she said. I've still got more to protect. The mailbox at 32 Winslow Avenue hadn't held a threat in weeks. No subpoenas, no forged debts, no tricks posing as bills. Instead, letters scrawled in crayon from the twins down the street. A thank you card from Ms. Ritter's granddaughter. An envelope with a tiny check, and the note. Not much, but it's something. For the pantry. Maggie stood at the garden bed in soft morning light, snipping mint leaves for tea. Bees hummed along the rosemary. The house, once a battleground, now smelled of cinnamon rolls and tomato seedlings. The chaos had ebbed. Not because it vanished, because she'd outlasted it. Inside, the living room buzzed with gentle industry. Noah and 2 college volunteers stood in front of a dry erase board marked Stewardship and Defense. Beneath it, Maggie's ledger lay open, not as evidence anymore, but as a teaching tool. This, Noah said, pointing to a carefully highlighted entry, is how Ms. Ellis tracked 10 years of informal lending. Every check, every reimbursement, every loan forgiven. She didn't just protect herself. She documented a system no one thought to question, until they tried to flip the story. A teenager in the front row raised her hand. So she didn't do it to fight? Noah smiled. She did it to remember. The fight came later. Laughter broke out across the room. Light, real. Maggie, listening from the hall, felt something inside her unknot. By Tuesday, the clinic's Saturday breakfast was fully funded, not just for the month, but for the year. A local reporter from the Carolina Ledger ran a follow-up piece titled, "The Nurse Who Took Notes, How Maggie Ellis Outsmarted a Legal Coup." It featured a photo of Maggie at the mobile pantry, ladling soup in her denim apron, and a sidebar noting Derek's ongoing fraud investigation and the civil filings pending in 2 counties. The story traveled. A regional NPR affiliate reached out. A retired judge sent a handwritten note commending Maggie's remarkable foresight and calm under siege. A university professor offered to base a case study on the trust structure she'd built. Donations surged. A community grant committee approved matching funds for the clinic. Volunteers flooded in, more than they had space for. Maggie didn't pose for interviews. She didn't update her voicemail greeting. But on Saturday morning, she set out a folding table on her porch, filled it with banana bread and blueberry muffins, and placed a handwritten sign beside the tray. Saturday breakfast. All welcome. No forms. No questions. Children played tag in the front yard. Mr. Halpern brought folding chairs. Ms. Ritter brought her ukulele. Even Noah's mother stopped by with homemade scones. Peace didn't arrive like a parade. It slipped in sideways, gentle and unnoticed, until it wrapped everything in warmth. That afternoon, Maggie sat alone in the sunroom, a quilt across her knees, the faint sound of laughter drifting through the open window. She was halfway through tying off a spool of thread when her phone buzzed. The screen read, "Private call, State Social Services intake." She answered. "Ms. Ellis? My name is Dana Monroe. I'm with Adult Protective Services. We received a confidential report regarding your welfare, concerns about possible coercion and undue influence by a relative." Maggie closed her eyes. "I see." Donna's voice remained gentle. "I'd like to schedule a preliminary visit, just to confirm everything's all right. This doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. It's a procedural check." Maggie stood slowly and crossed to the filing cabinet, already reaching for the tab labeled Contingency, APS Protocols. "Of course," she said. "Would you mind if I have my attorney present?" There was a pause. "Not at all, Ms. Ellis." Out on the sidewalk, Derek watched from the driver's seat of a borrowed sedan. He kept the engine running. He didn't see Maggie glance through the blinds. He didn't see Noah raise his phone from the side porch and begin recording. He didn't know that Elena had already flagged the APS tip line with a request to review recent anonymous submissions, especially those made under falsified family claims. What he did see, finally, as the porch door opened, was Maggie stepping out, standing tall, hair pinned back, a lemon pie in her hands. She handed it off to a neighbor, turned slowly, and looked directly at his car. She didn't blink. She didn't flinch. And she didn't wave. She simply went back inside, let the screen door close, and locked it behind her. One click, quiet and final. The final hearing wasn't packed. Not this time. No cameras, no neighbors, no whispered speculation. Just a quiet courtroom, 2 lawyers, a judge who looked mildly annoyed to have been dragged into this again, and one woman who had already won everything she needed to. Elena stood with practiced stillness. Before her, a thick binder, color-coded, tabbed, heavy with the weight of 5 years of defense. "Your Honor," she began, voice smooth as granite, "we submit for the court record the full chronology of support, stewardship, and unlawful coercion targeting Ms. Ellis." She opened the binder. "This includes notarized affidavits from 6 witnesses, a forensic ledger maintained by the respondent across a decade, the full trust deed filed with the county, and state-verified findings of financial misconduct by the petitioner, now subject to criminal proceedings in Mecklenburg and Durham counties." The judge flipped through the first few pages, then looked at Derek. He didn't speak. His suit was wrinkled. His hands fidgeted beneath the table. Vanessa sat beside him, face tight. Makeup unable to mask the way her business had withered under the weight of exposure. "You're here today," the judge said flatly, "to reassert a claim of ownership over a property you were never deeded, funded, or lawfully attached to. This after multiple rejections of guardianship, 1 dismissed eviction filing, and now pending criminal liability." Derek tried to interject. "No," the judge interrupted. "You don't speak today." He tapped his gavel once, not for drama, but clarity. "This court upholds the validity of the Ellis Trust. We deny any transfer or possession claim by Mr. Derek Ellis. Any further filings against the respondent's estate or rights will be considered harassment and may trigger contempt charges. Am I clear?" Silence. "Yes, Your Honor," Elena replied. Motion granted. Case dismissed. Outside, Maggie didn't stop on the steps. She simply walked past the last courtroom that would ever try to define her worth. Elena walked beside her, binder in one hand, a sealed envelope in the other. "That's for you," she said, passing it to Maggie. "My copy of the For When They Forget folder, in my private safe. Yours is protected." Maggie nodded. "Good. Let it sleep a while." That weekend, the clinic held its first annual volunteer honor breakfast. The tables were decorated with hand-cut sunflowers and mugs that read, "I am still here." Maggie didn't sit on stage. She didn't give a speech. She passed out muffins, smiled gently, shook hands with new volunteers. One girl, no more than 17, hugged her quietly and whispered, "You're the reason my mom still has a car." Noah stood behind the food table, watching it all. When the music dimmed and cleanup began, he walked over, took Maggie's hand, and said softly, "You didn't just protect the house. You made sure we all survived because of you." She looked at him, really looked, and let that settle in the places where the bruises had once lived. Later, back at home, she opened her binder one last time, smoothed the final page, labeled it, "Case closed." Then she tucked it into the bottom drawer, right beneath the family photo that used to sit on her mantel. The one with Derek smiling like he'd never lie. She didn't throw it away, but she didn't look at it either. At 9:52 p.m., a news alert pinged across the city. Local business owner indicted for misuse of client funds. Derek's mugshot was plain. The suit sagged. The charm gone. Vanessa had already changed her profile picture. Again. And on a quiet night in the same bungalow they once tried to pry from her fingers, Maggie made tea. Mint from her garden. Honey from a neighbor. Noah was asleep on the couch. A pot of soup bubbled low in the kitchen. The porch light was on. She sat down at the window with her tea, opened her notebook to a clean page, and wrote only one line. "They laughed at my illness and said I was a burden. Now they're the ones struggling to survive. She closed it gently, then she let it be still.